Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to my wine cellar for another wine adventure on Doc G's Wine and Spirits Review. Today we're going to take a short journey, not really so short, over to one of the most iconic wine regions in the world on the south central west coast of France by the Atlantic Ocean, a place which you've probably heard of before called Bordeaux. Probably no other wine region inspires so many images in terms of the chateau, in terms of the prestige, and even a little bit in terms of the mystery. I can guarantee you that it's a lot harder to talk about a Bordeaux wine than it is to drink it. So tonight, I'm going to just focus a little bit more on demystifying all of the aura around the Bordeaux wine, and we're going to focus on the grapes and the great wines that do come from this region in France. So to begin, let me give an outline as I usually do, but before I do that, can't wait to tell you about this one. Let me give you a brief overview of the region, because as much as you've heard about it, there's probably a lot you don't know. There's still a lot I don't really know, but I'm still learning. I want to talk about Bordeaux's special classification system, which is more the words than the wine. I want to talk about the grapes grown in the region, and then finally I want to do a little sampling of the three wines, one hidden back here, that I have for you to give you examples of what Bordeaux can bring to you. So let's start with the actual region. As I said, Bordeaux is located, if you had a map available, I'll post some things for you to take a look, on the south central west coast of France. It's in the Bay of Biscay, the whole area. There's actually a city called Bordeaux, but we're not just dealing with the city of Bordeaux, we're dealing with the whole wine region. There's a river called the Gironde River, which cuts the region kind of in half, and it creates two regions in Bordeaux, one called the right bank and one called the left bank. And then in the middle of those, there are two rivers that spur off from the Gironde, called the Dordogne to the north, and a little bit to the west and south is the Garonne River. And it's in between that area. There's an area called, in French, entre deux mers, literally between two tides, meaning the rivers that are there, there's this area nestled in there that is primarily responsible for the white wine grapes that you see coming out of Bordeaux. In each of these larger regions, they're divided into a large number of AOC regions, in excess of 50 of them. And an AOC in French, if you remember from the last presentation, or one of the presentations recently at least, I talked about the American viticultural areas. And I did that with the Jersey presentation. So they're called AVAs. In France, they're called AOC. Those are French letters for the words Appellation d'origine contrôlée, which means appellation or area of a controlled origin. So it's controlled by the soil and the climate and the kind of grapes, etc. Burgundy has its own AOCs. There are other AOCs all over the country of France. Some of the more important AOCs that you might hear of are like Saint-Emilion on this one bottle. Entre deux mers is actually its own AOC. And there are many, many others, too numerous to get lost in as we do this short journey through Bordeaux. So let's talk about the classification system a little bit. The classification system was a way for Bordeaux to take, it's a very, very large area, one of the larger AOCs, one of the larger regions in the wine growing world. And they decided that they wanted to classify, very kind of French, not to be, too picky about the French, but they like to classify things. So in 1855, they decided to go through this classification that honestly hasn't changed a whole lot. They're kind of fighting it along the way now. But you can see 1855 is a long time ago. And they established what are called growths, or crus in French. And there is a first growth which only has five or six chateaux in it. And chateau doesn't always mean castle. It's just the way in Bordeaux they talk about, even though you'll see pictures and they'll talk about these great castles. Bordeaux is not a castle region. If you want to see great castles, go to the Loire Valley in France. But the chateau, in terms of wine parlance, is a place where they grow wine. It could just be like a little winery. They might be hooked up or doing business hooked up with another larger chateau or organization, because some of these groups have wines that they distribute not only in the first growth, but in the second, third, fourth, and fifth as well, because there are business matters to take into consideration, otherwise known as the money. So, but to get back to it, there are first growth, which are the most expensive wines that you can ever get out of Bordeaux. There are second growth, deuxième cru in French, third growth, troisième cru, fourth and fifth growth, and then that's it. And then they have some other sub-classifications, and this goes for red and white. To be quite honest with you, in the time that we have to talk about this, or at least the time that I'm going to devote to it, it's too much to get in the weeds about it, and you lose track of the grapes, and you wind up talking about the structure in which they produce the wine. So we're not going to do that. We're going to sip, we're going to talk about grapes, and we're going to talk about wine. Oh, that's very good. So, let's talk about the grapes. Let's talk about the wine. Special to Bordeaux, you have to match up the different styles of the wine, meaning right bank, left bank, with the kind of grape, because to them, it matters. So let's begin. Most Bordeaux, 80 to 85, I don't want to quantify it, but it's a large percentage of Bordeaux wine is red. And the red grapes that are in Bordeaux wine are Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, one of my favorite grapes to drink alone, Malbec, and Petit Verdot. Now, you recognize the names of those grapes, maybe not the Petit Verdot. You don't see much of that in a bottle. But they grow all these grapes, and then they blend them. Remember, Bordeaux means a blend. It's never just a bottle of Cab or a bottle of Merlot. If you want a bottle of Cab or a bottle of Merlot, go to California or go to Chile or go somewhere where the grapes are bottled in a single varietal. But in Bordeaux, you pick up a bottle of Bordeaux, it's got at least 3 grapes in it. So the Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cab Franc, Malbec, and Petit Verdot are all and to be honest with you, the Malbec and Petit Verdot are at really minimal amounts. You can get great Malbec, you can get great all of these varietals, but in Bordeaux they're blended. And then the white wine grapes from Bordeaux are your Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon, and Muscadel. Sauvignon Blanc you're familiar with, I'm sure, from either having tried it, thinking about trying it, or having heard my presentation, obviously, way back when I started these. Semillon is a grape that tends to be a little bit more aromatic, a little bit bigger, adds a little bit of a difference to Bordeaux whites. And then another grape called Muscadel, which has that muscat kind of aroma to it, but it's not really muscat. It's not related to muscat at all, but it's floral, aromatic, and it adds a little bit of acid to the wines from Bordeaux. And all of your white wines come from the region, as I told you, Entre-deux-Mers. So if you're going to break that down even further, which you have to do if you're talking about Bordeaux wines, you want to look at a right bank. A right bank red wine from Bordeaux, meaning to the right of the Gironde River, is primarily a blend of Merlot, Cab Franc, and Cabernet Sauvignon. That's it. And because I read them in that order, it's proportionally higher from the Merlot to the Cab Franc to the Cab Sauv. The Cabernet Franc adds a little bit of perfume to it. The Merlot and the Cab Sauv add some structure. Left bank reds from Bordeaux contain Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and sometimes some Malbec and Petit Verdot. So you can see they change up the percentages of the grapes. And Cabernet Sauvignon tends to be a little bit bigger than the Cabernet Franc and the Merlot. So there's going to be a distinct difference. I don't know if I could taste it, but I'm sure there are good wine drinkers who can tell the difference between a left bank and a right bank Bordeaux. And I would say in this country there are a lot of winemakers in the Finger Lakes, I'm aware of it, out in California, and in wine regions, even here in Pennsylvania. Wine regions across the world, they have these red blends. Some of them call them Meritage, some of them just call it a red blend, that have the same percentages of these grapes, but they're not grown in Bordeaux, so they're going to have a different flavor profile. But you can, if you're really not interested in a Bordeaux, go find a nice red blend and look at the grapes on the label. If it's Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Cab Franc, you got yourself a Bordeaux. Yeah, as I just explained to you, you have a right bank Bordeaux. It's just not from the right bank of Bordeaux. So you can really mix it up and match and play around with it if you don't really want to get involved in this Bordeaux business. But I would recommend that you do by the time we're done here tonight. I hope you do. So the flavor profile for the reds that come from, and I'm not going to distinguish between right bank and left bank, because the flavor profile for Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and Cabernet Sauvignon is similar, not identical. But you're generally going to find currants, raisiny, that not real big, just dark fruit that comes from the Cabernet Sauvignon. That's classic scent and flavor in a Cabernet Sauvignon. You get your plum. The plum comes from the Merlot. If you've ever had a really good Merlot, it tastes like these over-dried, overripe plums. It's fantastic if you like plums. And finally, the violet flavor that you get, and cedar, which comes from all of those wines. Violet tends to come from the perfumey Cabernet Franc. You get a little bit of maybe a little pepper from those, and they're all tannic. The Bordeaux wines are tannic, so you're going to have to give them time to rest in the glass and decant them for that half hour to an hour to open them up and allow the oxygen to start to take over. The white wines, which I have here, they tend to exhibit grapefruit, like most Sauvignon Blanc, some lemongrass, some lemon lime, and then there's a third wine that's grown, a white wine that's grown in, or produced, I don't want to say grown because it's from the same grapes, is a wine called Sauterne, and that's in this bottle. You can see the really dark color. It's more of a dessert wine, and what they do with the Sauterne is they let botrytis attack the grapes and dry them out, and it causes this great sugar concentration to sweeten them up. Now, I told you before that a sweet wine generally has a lower ABV, but you can have sweet wines that have a higher ABV, and that's what the Sauterne does. It's 14%. So, in terms of food pairings, Bordeaux's a red wine. I mean, it's not just a single grape, but the reds from Bordeaux will pair with anything that most reds do: beef, pork, chicken, bison, burgers, big cheeses, big hard cheeses, go good with pasta and meatballs. You might want to do a Chianti instead, but I'll tell you what, a red Bordeaux will do just great. Red Bordeaux will be great with a pizza. So there's a lot of things that you can do with Bordeaux because it's got 3 to 5 grapes in it. Have at it. Just follow the regular guidelines. Just don't do white fish with it, and you'll probably be okay. As I always say, and I'll break out my red wine glass here, just have it with a glass. Try it out. All of those things I just told you about. I'll tell you about this one in a minute, but man, oh man, that's aerated for about an hour. Fantastic. So let's go back to the flavor or the food pairings. The food pairing for the whites, for these, fish, light summer dishes, salads, all kinds of vegetable dishes, shrimp, scallops, all the white meats that you might like, light chicken dishes, goes well with these whites from Bordeaux. So one of the things that people always ask about Bordeaux, in addition to the 1,000 of other things based on this weird classification system, is what about the cost? Well, let Doc G tell you. The cost of these can break your bank if you're going to go Premier Cru, first growth. I don't want to say you can't touch them because I don't know what your income looks like, but I'll tell you what, if you feel like spending a couple grand on one bottle of wine, go find yourself a nice Premier Cru red Bordeaux. I can tell you I won't be doing that. However, I'm sure the wines are exquisite. They probably ask you to age them for years. So back to reality. That only represents the top 10% of the wines that come out of Bordeaux. You can get Bordeaux's from 100 and under down to, you won't probably get any for less than 15. The whites you might get for 12 or 13 depending on where you get it. So basically the really, really ritzy Bordeaux's are probably unattainable to most of us. However, you can get yourself a good Bordeaux. And I mean good. Good to me means I'll drink it and share it with friends. Between $15 and $25 a bottle. In Pennsylvania, at Total Wine, wherever it is your wine, what state you live in, your wine shop, go look for the Bordeaux's. You have to learn how to read the label. I'm going to do a little bit of that with you as we go through our tasting here. So let's start then with the tasting. So I'm going to start out as I always do. I always like to go white to red. The white that I have here is a bottle from a chateau called Chateau Haut d'Ambert. Doesn't matter. There are so many chateaux. It does not matter. But if you're going to read the label, and they teach you how to read a label, there are websites that teach you how to read a label from Bordeaux. If you have to read the label and get in contact, who really wants to do all that? I do it because I'm a wine geek, but the average person's not. So you don't want to spend too much time reading. You want to spend more time sipping. So this is a 2018, and you'll see on the front, it tells you Entre deux Mers. You can't see it from here, but that's that area that I talked about. It's a 2018. It says Mise en bouteille au château. What that means is it was bottled at the winery. Chateau sounds like a fancy word. It's a word for castle in France. This chateau could have been somebody's little farm where they negotiated with somebody to bottle some wine for them from their winery. So all the French in Bordeaux have done is thrown all these words and put all these structures around their wine. The wine's still good. I'm at a loss to try to explain why they have to have this complicated classification system. So let's talk about this wine. This wine is 70% Sauvignon Blanc. I'm reading right from the label here for you. 15% Sauvignon Gris, which is a variation of Sauvignon Blanc, which tends to be less acidic. And it also has a grape called Muscadel, which I talked about earlier, gives it that aroma. There's a very distinct flavor to a white Bordeaux, and it does not come from their Sauvignon Blanc. It comes from the Muscadel. It gives it that little bit of zip, a little bit of acid characteristic. And this one is only 12.5% ABV, which means it's dry. This one actually I bought here in PA. I'll recommend that you go to the PA Wine and Spirit Shop and look at the Bordeaux region, and you'll probably find, if you don't find this one because it could be gone, find another one in the range of $12 to $15. I think I spent $15 for this with tax. So that's the Chateau Haut d'Ambert 2018 Bordeaux, white Bordeaux. It's a blend. It's not just one grape. So I'm going to sip this again for you. Getting a little bit of that. Oh, it's really grassy on the nose. You get that little bit of that Muscadel. Gives it just a little bit of a kick. Nice grapefruit, nice lemon lime on the palate. So let's move that one aside. Stand it over here. And let's go to the red. The red now is from, it's Chateau Saint-Brice, Saint-Emilion 2018. So that means it's from the Saint-Emilion AOC. And the Saint-Emilion in this bottle is bottled by Chateau Saint-Brice. I'll be quite honest with you. I tried to research these, and trying to find out what level growth these are is next to impossible. So I didn't bother. So what you'll find in this one, and again, read the wine label. It'll tell you it's 80% Merlot. So that tells you right away it's going to have a different flavor profile. 10% Cabernet Sauvignon and 10% Cabernet Franc. What I'm expecting in this glass is it for it to be very smooth. Definite, that violet from the Cabernet Franc. There's a little bit of very little oak, although these are oaked. Definite plum on the finish. This one I got from WTSO, and in that price range of $15 a bottle. This is fantastic. I don't generally go after Bordeaux's, and every time, almost every time, that someone either serves me a Bordeaux or I finally break down and buy one myself, I go, why the hell am I not having more of this? Because it is usually very good. So let's set that one aside, and we're going to close out with dessert. Now, this is Sauterne. Sauterne is a white wine coming from Entre-deux-Mers. These are basically dessert wines, meant to be had with fruit desserts, some blue cheese mixed in with it. Soft cheeses generally go well with these kind of wines. And if you notice my glass here, notice the color. A little bit amber. Big honey on the nose. Big apricot. Now that's different. Wow. Not overly sweet. You would think, well, you're saying it's a dessert wine, but it's not. This, with an apricot tart, maybe with some blue cheese kind of mixed in with a salad, would be very, very good. And by the way, just for your, I bought this one a while ago. This is a 2010. So it's 11 years right now in the bottle, and these sweeter wines tend to age a lot longer. This one doesn't really tell you much about on the back that you don't already need to know, other than it's 14%, so you don't want to drink too much. And you generally don't want to have more than what's in this glass at a sitting. It gets a little bit too cloying, but you can simply have it if you don't feel like having anything with it and you want something sweet. If you have a sweet tooth, this would be a good way to end a day. And for me, it's going to be a good way to end this presentation. So, my friends, until the next time, santé, and we'll see you again soon.